All right, hello students. This is Mr. Dwyer. I'm just running you through a SketchUp tutorial on how to produce the shed project. This is the wall and floor framing unit task 1 year 11 construction in SketchUp. As you can see on the screen, I've already gotten a little bit started here, and I've used some colors just to help understand the different parts of the project as I build them along. And I've tried my best to make sure that the colors are very closely to the color of the timber that we're ordering in. Now the colors represent the different types of timbers, the different parts. You'll see you've got the component window over here. Now in the components, you'll see the name of the product. I've also tried to put in a description of exactly what type of timber, which is all available in the specifications on the drawings that we've provided you for this project. Now, in terms of making this project, there are obviously lots of parts, but remember one thing, we're using timber. Timber, generally speaking, is a rectangular prism, and we have lots of pieces that are the same size. What this means for us is if we do our drawings in a smart way, we are able to make sure that we produce drawings in an efficient way without repeating processes too many times. So for example, you'll see when you look at the project here, yellow, yellow, and there's another yellow over here for our bearers. I only drew the bearer once, and then because it's the same piece, I repeated it 3 times. The same goes for the joists. I've drawn the joist once, I've saved them to components, and then I've repeated that every time I needed a joist, I've placed them in, and the same goes for the particle board flooring. So I'll get started, I'll show you how to do this. Start with yourself having a document. Okay, so close down SketchUp. New document. When we select a document, generally speaking, you're given an option to pick from a template when you open SketchUp for the first time. If not, just go new from template. You want to make sure that you're using architectural, and in architectural you've got different options here. So you've got inches, millimeters, centimeters, meters. We're obviously working in millimeters, so we'll be using the architectural millimeters model. Now, if you don't have the component window visible, you just go to window and select components here, make sure there's a tick next to it, and components will show up. This will show you all the parts of your project. By default, you're going to get a SketchUp model. I've got Mark in here at the moment. He's not at all required for this task, so click and delete. You can even delete him from your components if you wanted to, but it doesn't really matter at this point. Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to start with our first piece. Now, we build houses from the floor up, so we might as well design them in SketchUp from the floor up as well. So to get started, I'm going to save my project so that I don't lose it halfway through. Save it in a place where you're going to be able to find it later. Okay, name it something. I've called mine student demo so I know which file it is, but for you, you'd probably call this wall and floor framing task or task 3 drawings. Now you've got a few different axes here. You see the blue is the axes going up and down. Okay, that's top to bottom axes. You've got the red axes, which is the left to right axes, and then you've got the green axes, which is the depth axes. Okay, so when we're drawing a project, generally speaking, this would be the origin point, the start, and then we build away from the center. So I'm going to command 3. I see I've got my up and down, my blue and my red. That's what I want. Okay, and you'll also see, sorry, let me get rid of Mark again. You'll also see that sometimes when you zoom in and out, you've got all these weird extra lines show up. What we want to do is we want to go into camera and we want to put parallel projection on. Okay, so all I can see is the blue and the red. Rectangular prism, and I'm now going to draw the cross section of my first piece. Now I'm going to start with the bearers. The bearers go at the base of the project here, and my bearers, when I'm reading the specification here, are 90 by 70 millimeters. Now what this means is they are actually 90 tall and 70 wide. Okay, and so we have a rectangular prism that looks a bit like that, 90 tall, 70 wide. Now if I press Command 7, this puts me back into isometric view. I can now use the push-pull tool to give it length. Now how long are our bearers? Again, we go back to our drawing, and we know that our bearers are 3,600 long. Okay, zoom out so I can see the whole piece. That's 1 bearer. Now to save me from having to draw 3 bearers, all I do is I go back to my select tool, highlight my project, right-click, make component, and I'm going to call this bearer for main floor, 90 by 70 LVL, okay, done. Now, if you want to edit your component at any time, you just select tool, double click on it, and it gets all these dotted lines around it, okay, and then you can make edits. I'm going to make an edit where mine becomes colored. I'm using yellow because I'm hoping that the timber that I order for this particular part of the project is in yellow, so it'll be easier when we're trying to visualize it. So I've got one bearer now. I don't need to draw it 3 times because all 3 bearers are exactly the same, so click and delete. Next part of the project now is the joists. Now the joists will be running along the red as the depth. So I want to switch myself to a view where I've got the green like that, so green along the base, blue along the top. Draw myself another rectangular prism. Okay. Now this rectangular prism, what is the cross section of a joist? That is 90 by 45. Okay. Go back to Command 7, which is my isometric view. Let's give it some depth. 3,600 for these as well. Let's see the whole project. So I've now got a joist in. I'm going to again change the color here. Okay, I'm going to use a slightly different color, a little bit more of an orange color. Back to my select tool, right click, make component. I'm going to call this joist main floor, and it's 90 by 45 LVL. Okay. I've now got my bearers and joists ready to go for the main part of my project. Now you'll see that when we're looking at the plans, there is the square part of the house that we're building, or the shed, and then there is a smaller section off the front, which is the deck. It's slightly lower. So for this part of the project, our bearers are still 3,600 in size, but our joists are now 1,200. So again, we draw ourselves another joist. Okay. Again, the joists remain at 90 by 45. Back to our isometric view, give it some length. These ones need to be 1,200 in length. Again, because this is a joist, I'm going to use the same orange color because it's the same specific material. And then I'm going to make component. And this is the joist for the deck. And that's 90 by 45 LVL. Okay. The last part of my flooring is then to have some particle board or platform flooring on it. We're going to be using yellow tongue as the specific material. Now, I can just draw that in. Now, I know that my particle board flooring sheets are going to be 3,600 long, and they're going to be 1,200 wide. So I can do 1,200, 3,600 in my sizes. Okay. Now I also know from my specification that it's 19 millimeter thick. Okay. And what that means for me is I can again make that a component, but again I'm just going to change colors. So I'm going to pick just a different color here, and this might be a bit darker, just so we can see the floor. Make component, and this is platform flooring. And this is for the main floor. Okay. This is 1,200 by 3,600 sheets by 19 thickness. Yellow tongue is the specification that we're using. And done. The last part of my floor is that I then have decking boards on my deck. Now, my deck is 3,600 long, and the decking boards have a profile of 90 by 22. Okay. Now for this, going back to a side view here, I'm going to draw in something that is 90 by 22. Back to isometric view, push-pull, okay, 3,600 long. And now these are decking boards, so what that actually means is when I paint them a color, I could use a timber, okay, or a wood option here. And here we go, let's go like that. That's probably not the one that I'm looking for, maybe something a bit more like that. There we go. And again, make components, okay, decking board, and that's 90 by 22 millimeters. And does it specify what material it is? No, it's not, okay? It just says decking. All right, so what we've got now is all of the basic structures for my floor, so we can start building. Now the first thing we do when we build is we put a bearer in, okay? And we put a joist over top of a bearer, but we need to use our full-size joists. Now these joists need to sit on top of the bearers like that. Now the reason I've only put one bearer in so far is so that I can then line up my next one. Now I'm using the move tool. So the move tool is this one here with the 4 arrows at the top. And when I put a piece of timber in, it's highlighted blue. If I've got the move tool on, I can either select from any of the corners or I can select from any of the middle parts. So I'm going to select from the middle now because I want to line that up to the middle of this joist. And see how it snaps into position? It says there midpoint in joist. And that's exactly what I want. So now I've got my bearers spaced. I just need to check that they meet specification. Now the specification says from center to center, they cannot be more than 1800 apart. So if I measure that, what is the length? Okay. Now, luckily for me, I know that that's going to be less than 1800, but you can always measure it to be safe. Next thing I need to do is start putting my joists on. Okay, so not the joist, the main floor joists. Okay, and again, I pick the points that I want to snap to. I also know that when it comes to my joists, because of the specification, it tells me there are 2 joists at each end. Okay, so I'm going to start by putting my joists in at each end. The next thing I know is for the remaining joists, the maximum space they can have is 450 millimeters. So, and that's from center to center. So I'm going to draw a line from this center because that's counted as 1 joist. And I'm going to type in 450. And then I'm just going to keep repeating a 450 millimeter measurement along this line. And that will help me find my center points of where my joists need to go. Now, the specification that we're given is that the joists need to be 450 millimeters center to center. What that means for us is a maximum of 450. So you'll see the remaining that I've got here is approximately 360 millimeters. It doesn't matter if you go less than the specification, but you can never go more than the specification because what that means is you then don't have enough joist to support the particle board flooring. So now I've got those lines in. I'm going to be removing those soon, but I can then start putting more joists in. So I know there's going to be one roughly there. There'll be one roughly there. Again, I'm just putting them roughly into position for now because I have to lock them in to the spaces where I have set them up. So pick the middle point again. So move tool, middle point to the end of those lines. Now each time you want to move, you have to select a new one, find the middle point, run it along the end, and you'll see it'll snap into position and you'll see the end point. That's because the end of the line that you've drawn. Okay. Now if you find that you don't have enough joists, you can easily move them. If you find that you have too many joists, you can easily select them and delete them. There's no problem at all with that. Okay. And you just keep working your way along. I can tell already that I'm going to be short maybe 2 joists. Okay. And you just keep working your way along. Now you might think, wow, this is such a slow process, but remember, you've only drawn at this point 5 rectangular prisms. You haven't done anything super complex. All you're doing at the moment is copying and pasting. Okay, so we've actually saved ourselves a whole heap of time by using this make components option. Okay. Okay. So now I have a floor that looks a bit like this. Okay, and that's what we're going to be producing. I've got bearers along the bottom, I've got joists along the top. Okay. Last thing that I need to do is then put my platform flooring in over top. Okay. And again, I'm using the move tool to get corner to corner. Okay. So I've now got my platform flooring now. I don't really like this brown anymore, I'm really sorry. I know I picked brown before, but I'm just going to change it to something that reflects more closely because it is a timber product, so there we go. Now what I've got is I've got my subflooring basically. This is ready to go. I can start building my walls on top of this. So I'm going to select this whole thing, right click, make component. I'm going to call this main floor. Okay, now that's complete. The next thing that I need to do is to now build my deck. Now I can build my deck just over the end here. Okay, it needs to be positioned approximately here. But we know exactly where it needs to be located because the drawings actually tell us that there is a 48 millimeter step down from the floor to the deck. Okay, so it's as simple as just going in and making some adjustments. Now, what that means for us is we can go and we can say 42 millimeters down. Now, 42 millimeters is the top of the decking boards. Now the decking boards are 22 thick, so we can go down another 22 millimeters. And that's now going to be the top of our joists. So our first joist for the deck needs to be positioned along this point just here. Now the problem we've got when it comes to these joists, and you may be able to see the problem here, is those joists are now running the wrong direction. So we need to rotate them. So while you've got one selected, double click on it so you're in edit mode, highlight the whole thing, Command A, and then you need to make sure you've got the blue protractor on and you've rotated it around. Now that will mean that all of them that we pull out will be facing the right direction. Now if that's my first joist and I know bearers go underneath it, then it's a matter of now putting a bearer in. Now I need to put a bearer into the other direction as well. So again, I'm rotating around 90 degrees and I'm now going to call this right click, make unique. This is making it its own separate component. And you'll see it's repeated bearer main floor 1. I'm going to edit that, bearer for deck. Okay. And now whenever I need a bearer for the deck, I can select that option there. Now again, at the moment, I've only still made 4 rectangular prisms. I haven't actually outdone myself here. Okay, let's get this rotated. Whoops. Now see how that's happened there? That's because I haven't actually selected the whole project, so I need to make sure I've Command A to select the whole thing. Okay. Move these into position. So one's going to go there, and the next bearer needs to go to this position there. So now I've got my bearers for the next part of my floor. I need to now start putting my joists in. Now on the drawing, because we've only got a decking here, we don't actually need to have a joist doubled at the ends. We only double for the main house because there's a lot of weight going down there, but the deck doesn't have that additional weight. Okay. Again, I just need to run some decking, some more joists along here. And remember, it's 450 center to center. So again, we go from center, 450, and work our way along. 450, work our way along. 450, work our way along. Now you keep repeating this until you've made your way to the end. It can be less than 450, but it can never be more than 450. Okay, you can see that last one, if I put 450, hangs outside, not a problem at all. Okay, so start putting your joists into position. Okay, there we go. Got my joists in now. The next thing I'm going to need to do is put my decking boards on now. See, my decking boards are facing the wrong direction as well. Edit these, Command A, use the rotate tool. Make sure I'm on the blue surface. Okay. And now I need to just simply move from that point to that point there. Now, on our drawings, we're going to have the decking boards touching. But in real life, you'd leave space between your decking boards, approximately 2 or 3 millimeters, okay, just so that you can have some water run through the deck and it won't sit and pool on your project. But for this drawing, I'm not going to waste our time doing that. Now what you'll probably find, see this last bit here, how that doesn't fit a whole decking board, you're going to need to draw in a manual piece just to fill the last gap. We know that it's going to be 3,600 long. Okay. And we also know what color it's going to be, so we can get our timber here and we can start filling that bit in. Okay. Nice and simple. I think I picked the wrong type of timber there. Now, if you wanted to be a little bit pedantic, what you could do is you could be Making sure your timber matches. You could be making this its own component. There's a whole heap of different things you could be doing here, but I wouldn't stress too much if I was you. Okay. Rotate around. There's going to be a piece over on this side as well. It probably needs to be done. Okay. Just there. Done. Okay. Now you see sometimes you get a bit of a glitch in your project. Okay. Just save your project. Your product is still there. It's not a problem. Okay. The best thing you can do when this happens, saves your project, close it, and then reopen your project. Okay. Now it usually indicates that there's something happening on your computer that's taking up all your memory. For me, it's me making this video. So I'm going to cut the video now. I'll save that file and then I'm going to start a new one. What you've done at the moment is you've created the floor for your entire house. Well done.